On the Buy to Let show, we've been talking about what happens when it doesn't go to plan. Let's explore that now with Paul Shamplina, founder of Landlord Action, Christina Dimitrov from Direct Line, and Steve Harriot from the Tenancy Deposit Scheme. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
So, my first question, Paul, you are a master at this. Do you think landlords typically reference the tenants properly, or should they be doing more?
How long have we got? The problem with landlords is a lot of landlords, especially we say the amateur landlords, which is 90% of the landlords out there, they will rush into a let and they won't do enough diligence. Obviously, their property is their biggest investment.
Absolutely.
So spend a bit more time, make sure you get that gut feeling. But of course, you have that mortgage payment at the end of the month. So obviously, what we would always say is you always go for your bank statements. 3 months bank statements will tell the landlord how much the tenant's getting paid a month. Are they getting paid by the employer they say they're with?
Yeah, and also you said on the day, look at the day that they're getting paid,
yes.
So you know when to look at charging the rent as well.
Yes.
Is that right? Yeah,
yeah, it's really
that's
important. So you need to know that if they do say they're on a salary of 25k, what's the net figure, and are they getting that salary on a standing order at the end of the month?
Yeah.
As well as obviously previous landlords reference, and obviously the employment's reference, character references, credit checking. You've got to put the little pieces of the puzzle together.
Yeah, okay, I think that's really helpful. Any other thoughts?
Well, I mean, I suppose one thing that a lot of people do wrong is they just go online, the very first tenants reference sort of check they find, or a quick shortlist, ask their buddy. You know, it's not that simple. You need to sit down and see the full picture. It's like, where would I start if I needed to employ somebody to do something for me? And I want this to be a long-term relationship. It's almost having this approach that helps you figuring out what are the questions you need to ask and then need to know.
Okay, Steve?
Well, we deal with about 1.4 million landlords, so we see a huge range of experience. And I think that one of our big mantras is it's really important to get things right at the start of a tenancy, because that stops problems at the end. Yeah. And clearly, referencing your tenant, knowing who the tenant is, knowing their history, knowing their employment background, knowing the previous tenancies they've had and what landlords have said about them is pretty key. So I think it is worth spending time on getting the referencing right. I think landlords will reap the rewards of that at the end.
And actually, I can just tell you, only on Friday, I was filming for the TV programme Nightmare Tenant Slum Landlords, and I was filming in Halifax, and this landlord, he spent 3 or 4 months renovating this property, and while he was renovating, this tenant had come up to him while he's renovating, who lived down the street, and said, I'm looking for a place. And he thought, I'll help this tenant
lovely.
out. Moved her in, and of course, she's now on the programme at Nightmare Tenant Slum for Slum Landlords.
Right, I assume not paying much rent.
Didn't pay any rent, didn't reference, and he made a mistake. So it's all about the referencing.
Yeah, okay. And I guess tenancies, we have to accept tenancies are going to have difficulties. And where, in your experience, should landlords turn to help? Steve, you do quite a lot with a charitable foundation.
Yeah, so the TDS Charitable Foundation really exists to try to help landlords and tenants find out more about how to exercise their rights and responsibilities. So there's a huge amount of resource available online. You need to look for it. It's all free. The Landlord Association, Residential Landlords Association, for example, is a great source of information. Citizens Advice Bureau, other organisations are out there. So I think you can find stuff. It's available online. Don't be afraid to search for it and you'll find it.
Okay, and I think that is the point, is do search for it, Christina, and don't just do exactly what the chap did that Paul was mentioning, accept a tenant that walked in off the street.
That's right. I mean, from our perspective, we're an insurer, and so we are here to help when something goes wrong in your property. And I suppose the key areas where insurance helps are, the majority of claims and problems from our perspective are accidental damages of smaller scale or larger magnitude. Yeah. So, for example, you have a leak and you need this to be fixed, so your insurer will come and help you and cover the costs of this fix. And that's very frequent. But then there's things that they're quite rare or less frequent, but they can be quite scary if they happen. So, for example, malicious damage by your tenants, probably also featured on your program at some point. Exactly. But, these people might have made some damage to what's inside your property, the structure of your property. They might have trashed something that's yours, and then now they're out and you need to cover for these costs. There is cover for that. There is cover for public liability if, for example, there's been a leak that's caused the neighbouring property to carry some damages to the structure.
Something you might not think about.
Exactly. It might be legal costs that come up to you. It might be costs of, paying to your neighbours. So these are things that also are there. But then consider rental income, tenants not paying. That's something that's going wrong and that has a massive impact on you. You can insure yourself against that too. You can get insurance that covers you, again, for this particular need when your constant income stream has been stopped. They can even help you with the eviction process as well then, the costs of eviction, the costs of repairing, getting the property ready for the next tenant once the current tenant has been evicted.
So you can get back on track.
Exactly. But one thing to keep in mind is, and just to get back to the tenants referencing bit, your insurer does check if you've done your due diligence and if you have tenants referenced and therefore have checked the risks.
Okay, so it's like an extra check for you.
You need to, you need to do your job in the beginning.
Yeah, okay. Paul?
I think the biggest problem that landlords have is actually ignorance, is that they think I'm going to get a buy-to-let, or obviously a lot of them are default landlords, but they just can't keep up with the constant legislation changes and the actual time it takes to actually manage a property. They don't put a price on their time.
Cheap.
And cheap is always expensive. I'm a great believer in that. And I would always say to a landlord who's embarking on the journey of being a landlord or being a landlord by default, always use a letting agent. Do you want to be taking calls at 3 o'clock in the morning from a tenant that's lost his keys or the boiler broken down? Most landlords will say no, and they'd be happy to pay the 10 or 15% management fee. It's a complete no-brainer.
But important to bear in mind, again, Steve, letting agents aren't regulated, are they? So you've got to look for somebody that's a Arla, Nals, Ricks or UK Arla agent.
Correct.
Voluntary.
I think that's right, because I think those agents who have a professional body behind them, I think on the whole are delivering a better service. They're covered by codes of practice, they're covered by training. So I think the people that work in letting agents can help the inexperienced landlord to get to grips with the whole raft of legislation and regulations that surround lettings.
And of course they've got client money protection, which is a must.
Yes, absolutely. So that's where if somebody runs off with the rent, you still get it as a landlord. That's the important bit.
I mean, a quick word about the deposit, if I might, because I think at the end of the tenancy, the deposit is potentially there to help landlords deal with things that go wrong. And again, another great source of advice for both tenants and landlords about the deposit is to just ring up the tenancy deposit schemes, and we've got free call centres that will give advice on those sorts of issues to landlords.
So even if I'm worrying about it, or I'm just not, something's cropped up and I'm not sure if that's something I can hold
Correct.
onto 6 months
we often get
down the
calls
line.
about, can I claim for a broken toilet, for example, from the deposit? And if you're unsure about that, just ring the schemes up. We can give advice on that.
Okay, so don't stick your head in the sand is basically the other thing. And what sort of things can a landlord and what do they retain from a deposit perspective? Because that can be one of the big areas for disputes, can't it?
It can. So I think it's important that if you're going to take a deposit, and most landlords do take a deposit to help protect them, that first of all the tenancy agreement is pretty clear about what deductions you can make. So just be careful about that. Not all tenancy agreements that you can download from the internet will have a right deposit protection clause. So getting that right is important.
Okay.
Most of the claims we get involve cleaning claims. They appear in over 50% now of all of our disputes. So the key thing there is to make sure that at the start of the tenancy you've got a good inventory and a schedule of condition that really sets out how clean the property is room by room and the condition of any furniture or fittings in the property. It's worth investing in that at the beginning.
Yeah. And that provides you the evidence you need to assess
any
any
And at the end, you need to
claims.
repeat it. So at the end of the tenancy, you've got to go back in and assess how clean the property is room by room, whether there's been any damage caused to the property, and then that's the basis of any claim. And I think it's also important that landlords understand this concept of fair wear and tear. Clearly, if you've had a carpet that's been down for 10 years and it gets a bit damaged at the end of that 10 years, you can't really claim for a brand new carpet.
Betterment.
Betterment. Exactly.
It's called fair for a reason,
Yes,
basically.
It is. And I think that is also quite important because clearly over time furniture and fittings do deteriorate, and it's only reasonable that the landlord gets some recompense if they're damaged, but you won't get back the full cost of renewal that you would have paid at the beginning.
That's great. Thank you so much. So that's it from the Buy to Let show. Thanks to my guests. Hope you found that useful. Don't forget you can see all of our programmes online. See you next time and bye for now. Here on the Buy to Let show, we aim to bring you all the information you need to run a successful buy to let. You can find more advice and help by following these links. And you can download our special ebook, which goes with the programme.